Hey everyone, thank you so much for being here. Today we're talking about my number one piece of advice when it comes to elopements, and that's not letting your elopement location dictate your experience. Let's dive in. So these are pretty laid back, different styles of videos that I'm doing right now, basically just to give you, the couple, a little bit more education on what to expect when eloping. Just some of the things that kind of come up and just how it's different from a wedding day and how you can either embrace traditions or if you want to push them away a little bit, you could do that as well. But that's what these videos are really about. But today's video about not letting your elopement location dictate your experience is a really big topic to consider, because in the world of elopements right now, you've probably seen it online, they're called adventure elopements. A lot of people like to hike or do things outside or whatnot, but they're not exactly a good thing in some ways, and I'm going to dive into that today. But also too, I'm going to give you a little bit to think of to where you actually have some practical steps to take, and you can just figure this out for yourself, whether that's something you want or you don't want. But yeah. So let's dive in. I have 3 different levels of why this is important. This is a topic that actually has come up for me personally in the past couple weeks with helping a couple plan their elopement alongside my friends Lauren and Travis of Love Lorraine. They're elopement photographers, and I'm going to be shooting an elopement with them in New Zealand coming up at the end of this year. So whenever we were helping our couple plan their day, there were a lot of different locations to consider because, of course, New Zealand is a really beautiful place. There's a lot of things that you could do, and there's just a lot of things you don't want to leave out, and I get that. I mean, there's always a thing or a thing in the back of your head about saying, like, that the fear of missing out, and you don't want that to happen, and you want to get to those locations, and whether they're a longer hike or it just takes a lot of energy or time to get there, that's what we're really going to dive into today to try to figure out. All right, so while we're on that topic, I'm just going to dive right into it. The first one is just not letting it control your day. There's a lot of times with elopements, like I said before, you can get caught location hopping, whether that's in a car or hiking somewhere. There's a lot of different ways that can really take away from your elopement day that way. One of the big things that I always tell couples whenever they book me is you don't want to pay me to sit in the car with you. That's not your goal here. Your goal is to get married. Your goal is to celebrate you in a way that really feels like you. Because after all, one of the big reasons that you probably didn't want to have a wedding is because you just didn't want the stress of all the planning or just the stress of the schedule. And I think that's one of the big things that a lot of couples still forget when they see their elopement. They think that they're going to break away from that, but oftentimes they fill their day with other things instead. So that's one of the things, like, just consider, like, you don't want to be in a car all day, and I really don't suggest that to many couples. I just suggest having maybe 2 or 3 locations that are fairly close by, and also too, that's something that you definitely want to spread that out over 1 or 2 days. I really would not suggest, if you book somebody for less than 6 hours, to try to hit more than 2 locations. That's just not really a good thing to consider. You're not really going to get the benefit of what you think out of that. But another thing too is, you want to be able to not have to rely on the weather. Depending on where you're getting married at, like in Colorado, there's a lot of thunderstorms in the afternoons. In Iceland, it can just rain all the time. New Zealand gets super windy in the evenings and afternoons. So you just have to be very aware of not putting too much of all your eggs in one basket and then being disappointed whenever it just doesn't work out, because sometimes the weather just doesn't want to cooperate with us like that. But also too, I think another really big point is you just want to spend intentional time with your loved one. You don't want to look back on your wedding day and just say, like, oh yeah, we were in the car, or we went to these spots. Like, you want to actually have experiences that are meaningful. So I just really want to encourage you not to just hop like that. And that's also something too that, as an elopement photographer and videographer, I can help you out and figure that out. And that's something that I do with a lot of my couples, if not all of them, is just the planning experience. So you can actually create a day that feels really right to you and really authentic to you. But also too, just logistically, it doesn't feel rushed. It doesn't feel like it's too much. And you can just really make an intentional day out of that. But also too, I just want to encourage you to think of a few different things here. One being like, what does your wedding day say about you? Who are you as people, and how do you want to celebrate that? And then also too, what do you value most? Whether that's, time with family, or time with, your loved one, or time doing a particular experience together. So just consider those few things, when you're actually looking into planning your elopement, and actually not letting, the fear of, missing out of locations, or like having the perfect location come into mind. Because at the end of the day, what really matters is just you two being together, you two feeling celebrated in a way that is authentic to you. So that's what I would consider with that. But let's dive into the next one. That would be, it shouldn't limit who's there with you. This is going to be a controversial topic for a lot of people, because there's still the idea out there that eloping is just two people running off to a courthouse, or just two people standing on the side of the mountain. And I'm just here to tell you that's really not the case at all. It's actually not the case at all. That's a false statement, because I'm the firm believer that an elopement is more so of a mindset of intentionality than it is an actual number. I don't discriminate against any sort of number, whether you want to have, your closest friends and family there with you, and that's 10 or 15 people. That doesn't matter to me at all. I think what matters is that if those people are important to you and you want them there, you should have them there. That's a non-negotiable. So don't let whatever you see on the internet, about eloping, or, micro weddings, people call it that too, or just intimate weddings is another word for it that you might see online. Don't let that dictate who is with you, or your location dictate who is with you. Because there's always a lot of options that, if you really want to go to a specific location, there are options for us to get you there. And it might not be on your wedding day. You might still be able to, to have that full experience with your family, and then we can go on a separate day, just the you two, or, figure out another option for you that actually works, to where you can actually spend time with your loved ones. That's something I do on a very consistent basis. There's lots of different options. I've seen it all there. So if you have any questions about that, definitely let me know. But yeah, another thing to also consider too is like, you don't want to go there just because it looks cool online. Because I'm sure, as a lot of you know now, 2023, like, you can look online and, people can be photoshopped out of pictures. A lot of times whenever you see very popular spots online, it is not as it appears in person. I'm sure you've seen plenty of memes about that. It's a thing, it's real. So that's another thing too, kind of going back to the last point of like not putting all your eggs in one basket of, hyping it up to where it's going to be something specific, but it's not. Because, in all honesty, a lot of the good locations that you don't have to necessarily hype to or whatnot, they're going to have some people there probably, but that's where hiring somebody who's an expert in those particular locations is really going to benefit you the most. Because, for instance, I know of a lot of spots in Colorado that there are, particular times of the year or particular times of the day that you're not going to see anybody there. So that's another thing too, just to kind of consider as well. But another thing too is, whenever you're picking a location, a couple things to really consider would be, go somewhere that has meaning or purpose to you. Don't go somewhere just because you saw it online, like we said before. It's probably not going to turn out like you thought. So I would really suggest you going somewhere that has meaning to you, whether it's in a way that you can revisit it in the future, or it's something that both of you have just dreamed about for a really long time and you just want to experience that together for the first time. I think that's something that, in the end, it's going to benefit you a lot more than just going somewhere because it looks cool online. Now it's, online is trendy. That's just kind of the way it works. There's going to be a new spot every single week. So go somewhere that you truly, truly enjoy, not just because you feel hyped on it on the minute. But also too, like I said before, going somewhere that you can experience for the first time I think that's a really special thing to do. Whether you've been there before and your spouse hasn't, or whatever it might be, I think that's something that's really meaningful to a lot of couples. That's why I see a lot of couples going to Iceland and New Zealand. simply because they just haven't been there before. They want to experience something new on their wedding day, and they want that place to hold that special meaning to them, to where their first association with it is whenever they get married, and just kind of have that special thing for them going for the rest of their relationship, and just their lives in general. But a really good example of that would be the New Zealand couple that I'm working with right now. She had a Pinterest board full of things from New Zealand that she just really wanted to do and experience. And she's had it for over 10, 11 years or so. And that's something that she was saving New Zealand just for that experience with her husband. And he was really excited about it too. So just kind of consider it from a perspective like that of, figuring out a way to actually make it a little bit special and doing something that is really meaningful to just you. And then for our third one, it's just about letting go. I think that, we've talked about it a little bit already, but just having those expectations about how things are going to go a certain way or it's going to look a certain way, just going in with the expectation of, we're not here for this location. We're here because we want to get married. The location is definitely a bonus. So that's something just to really consider with that. But I think too, whenever you make that choice, you're saying, instead of, like the location matters the most, you're saying to your spouse, like all these other things don't matter, you do. That's the thing that we're here for. That's what matters. Because I think a lot of things, like we said earlier too, about, a lot of you probably decided to go the elopement or small wedding route because you didn't want to hold on to a lot of these tight schedules or expectations or things like that. So I just want to encourage you to be aware of that whenever you go into choosing your location, planning your elopement. Just make sure that you're not holding tight to those things. Make sure that you're kind of going in with the open hand approach of saying, it doesn't really matter what happens here. It's going to be great. One example that I have from that is from a couple that I just shot with about 2 weeks ago. They were getting married out in Estes Park here in Colorado. They originally had plans to have their ceremony inside of the national park at a specific spot, and then the weather came through. It was just a wash pretty much. So they had rented a nice Airbnb. So they went back there and they didn't care. They just wanted to get married. So they said their vows on the back porch, which did have a nice view. But I wouldn't say, it was like anything, super incredible, but it was just a really genuine moment between the two of them because they didn't let their location dictate their experience. They were super happy about it, and they're, just saying the whole time, they're like, hey, it would have been cool if that would have worked out, but at the end of the day, it didn't. That's okay. The goal was still accomplished here. And, we can't really be upset about it. But for them, it just happened to be too that the rain did clear up. So then we went to a different part of the park that we actually weren't even going to go to at first. And it was just perfect. So there's a lot of different things like that of, just like I said before, going into these experiences, which is kind of like an open hands approach, saying, there's going to be a lot of stuff that's out of our control, but there's only one thing that truly matters. And that's what we're going to stick to, and that's what we're going to commit to, and that is going to dictate our experience, not the location. So that's all I have today with that. If you have anything specific, please feel free to go to my website. If you go down into the description below of this video, you'll see a lot of different links to my website for free resources, for just guides, photos, films, different things like that. But also too, if you want to get in touch with me, go to the contact page. Fill out the form. It'll take you about a minute. And then after you submit the form, it'll forward you to another page that's going to give you a lot more information about just the full process of working with me. Just some things to what you can expect. But thanks again for checking this out. I hope you all have a really great day. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'm an open book, and transparency is my top priority. So if you have any other questions, definitely do that, and I'll see you all in the next one.